So what are we doing today?
Well, I'm making Morgan coffee right now, but we are headed up to meet a Instagram follower slash friend and shoot some content. So it is Sunday morning at 8 a.m. and we are headed to meet David Pere.
My name is David Pere. I'm the founder of the Military Millionaire community.
He's from Military to Millionaire on Instagram. So it's kind of one of those like social media friends that I've never met in person that we are going to kind of interview and get some tips and tricks from. And the neat thing with David is he built a rental portfolio worth about $3 million on his military income while active duty.
Today I want to talk to you a little bit about the journey from military to millionaire, as my name states.
So this isn't somebody who is making, $250,000 a year and decided to buy rentals. This is somebody who I think was thrifty, kind of penny pinched, and made this a priority so that way he could exit the military as a millionaire.
I just want you to know I really appreciate all your hard work.
Good to meet you, brother.
Likewise, finally.
Yeah, it's about time.
This should be fun.
Should we just roll?
dive in?
All right.
Okay, cool.
Like awkward, like.
Yeah. All right, so let's say hypothetically, is private the lowest rank?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I'm a newly minted private. I've been in boot camp, so I've been saving money because I haven't been able to spend it.
Yep.
And I'm out, and I'm looking at that new truck.
No.
So, yeah, exactly. Bad. I'm assuming you weren't affluent when you joined the Marines.
No.
Okay. So, started out
Broke.
broke. Cool. I didn't want to you started out dirt poor.
No, I mean.
But started out like tight on cash, and 12, 13 years later, while you've been in the Marines, you're now at the point that you're like a millionaire.
Yep.
Which is, I think everybody has that goal, right? So kind of walk us through kind of what that journey's looked like for you, but also like give us some of the fun pitfalls along the way.
Yeah, well, you alluded to the vehicle, and we were talking before this. I've made all those mistakes. Both car people.
Yeah.
And I've bought and sold more crappy vehicles and overpriced vehicles than I know what to do with. So like we were talking about before we recorded, I did this thing where I deployed, and when you deploy, you get tax-free income or tax-exempt income and combat pay, so like extra hazard pay, and you make a pretty substantial amount of money for a young, I made like $20,000 in like 6 months on a deployment, maybe a little bit more. I was buying cigarettes and protein powder, all the important deployment things while there. And I came back and I bought a 22-year-old truck, a Harley, a rifle that I can't even own in this state because it's not legal and really is not even worth owning.
What kind of rifle?
Just a Leopold, or not Leopold, that's the scope, but a DPMS 308, like a SAS rifle. Long range gun, which is great, but there's nowhere that I can sit and shoot 1,000 yards, and just fun gun to own, don't really get to use it. So I bought all that, and then obviously, tattoos, a ton of alcohol, all the really super valuable investments.
Nice.
And money was gone in
I was going to say,
maybe
how long
3
did that
months.
deployment money last?
Yeah, maybe 3 months, right? Which is, in itself on the surface, like everybody else does it, and you're like, oh man, like, okay, I blew some money on some stuff, like cool. Except then you start figuring in opportunity costs. And had I just put that in a 401k and left it alone, it'd be 2 or 3 times that, maybe 4 times that right now, given the last 10 years of interest rates. And I got nothing to show for it. The Harley got totaled, the truck is sold, the tattoos are still there, and the rifle's in Missouri, which, I guess I still have it. I haven't shot it in 3 years, but
Tattoos probably don't look as good as they used to, though.
Yeah, oh man, I look way better than I did when I was 18.
So,
Total waste.
So what would you, like, walk us through what you did well. So if I'm, you know, say I'm new to the armed forces and I'm trying to make good decisions where I'm going to leave in a position better than where I joined.
Well, the first thing I would tell people is, so I did contribute to my thrift savings plan, and I did that well. I didn't put in quite as much as I should have, and I didn't know the right fund allocations. But luckily, the TSP, which is our military 401k, they've revamped it a little bit to where you get the money instantly goes into like a life cycle fund, which changes based on your age. For like, it's super aggressive when you're young, and it slowly morphs into a more conservative as you get older.
Is it more like stocks early on and then goes more like bonds as you get older?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. And so when I first joined, it automatically went into bonds, which never lose money. But you know, from 2009 to 2015, I left my money in there. I earned like 2%, while the rest of the market earned like 20 to 30% in one of the greatest appreciation cycles we've seen. And I mean, I'm literally missing out on, I mean, my TSP would be probably triple what it is now.
Okay.
Had I did the math on it, and it was like 3 years ago, I was short like 40 grand on what I would have been. So it's probably would have doubled again by now. And it's, so not a fun spot to be in.
Yeah.
So the first thing I would do now is, if I was joining, so the new retirement system will match 5% of your contributions into the TSP. So the very first thing I would tell anybody is at least 5% of your paycheck needs to go into the TSP, because that's an instant 100% ROI that the government is paying you to put money in there. And honestly, I would tell people to start off with a higher percentage, because, well, I mean, 401k money, you know, you don't get it till you're later in life, but you can always roll it into a self-directed IRA and use that to invest in real estate or whatever you want. But the reality is, if you're 18 to 23 years old, 22 years old, if you can put a substantial amount of money in a TSP or a 401k or whatever and let it ride, like, then you know that no matter what else you mess up in life,
you have
that money will be there to cover. Like when COVID hit, everybody was, you know, freaking out about expenses and tenants not paying rent. And I looked at my thrift savings plan and I did the math and was like, just this alone could hold all of my rental properties 100% vacant for 16 months. I have nothing to worry about at all. And so I think that provides a level of security that when you get out of the military or decide to do a side hustle or whatever, you can afford those bigger risks, because you know, okay, I've got income coming in from the military while I'm in, but now I have this 401k that will grow on its own, that even if I fail at everything, my retirement is covered.
You're kind of on like a fixed appreciating pay scale, where kind of the longer you're in theory, you make more if you do a good job.
Absolutely.
But early on, it sounds like really one of the key things is making sure you're doing at least that 5%.
Yep.
And making sure you avoid some of the, like, you don't need a chromed out Harley kind of decisions early on.
Yeah, don't spend your money on recurring debts. So people will go and buy, you may need a car. The reality is most people don't need a vehicle, depending on where they end up. Like if you go to Japan as your first duty station, you don't need a car. So don't buy a car. Like save every penny of that. And you can save that, you can max out your thrift savings plan, which is awesome, or you can put some in your thrift savings plan and put a ton away in just a savings account with like a high yield savings or an index fund or wherever you choose to save that money. And so you're not going to have enough money to go and buy a rental property your first year. You can use the VA loan, which we can talk about in a little bit, but you need to save that like your first year or two in the military should be like, okay, I want to put some money in my retirement account that's going to grow and compound because I'm young and it's the best time to do it. I should put some money in a savings or an emergency fund. I should put some money in an investment fund. Like your first year or two should be, okay, I'm making enough money that I'm basically financially free. My housing's covered, my food's covered, my medical's covered. Like I'm good. I don't need this cash. So instead of buying alcohol, let me save this money here so that when I decide to step out into whatever it is that my next adventure is, all of my negative what ifs are covered.
So let's talk, because this is actually one of my favorite topics, house hacking.
Of course.
And so house hacking is effectively buying a 2-family, a 3-family, or a quad, so 4 families, and leasing out the other units while you live there, effectively covering your mortgage, your taxes, your insurance, maybe your utilities, and even paying you a little bit of money so you can kind of quote like live for free without being like in the barracks or something.
Yeah. So So my first property was a house hack. I bought a duplex. I actually used the FHA loan because my lender, who was supposedly a VA loan expert, talked me out of using the VA loan. He was like, you don't want to waste your VA loan on an $80,000 duplex. Now I'm much smarter and I realize that you can use the VA loan more than once. It's not a waste. So that's part of why this whole thing started. Was I was like, man, I got burned by this guy who was supposedly an expert in the VA loan and didn't know what he was talking about. And I got burned on my TSP because no one knew what to tell me. And I got burned on all these other things that should be common sense, but nobody knows about them. So I'm just going to document what I'm learning. And then it just kind of blew up because people were like, oh, that's good. But the VA loan is incredibly powerful, especially since they reduced or eliminated the limit on what you're allowed to buy on your first VA loan purchase this year in January. And so, for example, I know two guys, well, we'll just use the one downtown, who he's an E5, he's single. So his paycheck is not huge. His BAH or housing allowance is not huge.
He didn't get that bonus wife, huh?
Yeah, he did not get that bonus wife. He actually was a barracks Marine. He lived in the barracks. He's a drill instructor. He lived in the barracks. And when COVID happened, they were like, hey, we need the barracks for recruits who get sick. We're going to move them into the barracks. So here's housing allowance. Go find a place to rent. And he lived with a buddy for the 2 months while he looked around. And he found a place to buy. He's like, well, if they're going to give me the money to buy a house, I'm going to make it work.
Yeah.
And he was able, with the VA loan, to buy a $1.23 million fourplex. And he has 3 tenants and then 2 roommates in the unit that he lives in. And he's clearing $100 a month, $200 a month. So not much, right? But he's paying off $3,000 a month in principal. He's keeping his entire $2,600 a month tax-free housing allowance. So, I mean, I view that as cash flow because he would have to pay that to live somewhere else. So that right there is like $5,000 added to his net worth every month just for buying the house. But when he moves out, it'll cash flow, and it's in an appreciating area of town, and he got paid $600 to walk away from closing. So where else can you find where somebody who makes less than $50,000 a year on their taxable income can buy a $1.2 million house without a penny out of pocket? Yeah. I mean, and he did the smart thing before he did all that, because that's a risky, purchase. But he had saved money as a young Marine. He has 50 grand in the savings account. He saves money. He's frugal. He didn't buy all the crazy cars. He did the right things. But I mean, he's been in less than 4 years. I think he's 22, 23. And I mean, that's...
Dude, I wish I was there at 22, 23.
You and I both. I'm like, I was talking to him and I was like, dude, congrats. He's like, on what? And I was like, becoming a millionaire in 30 years. He's like, what? And I was like, literally, all you have to do is not lose this house.
Just don't
hold on. just right. Hold on, and you're good for forever.
But I think another neat thing you can do with the VA that a lot of people don't realize is you could even do a house and rent out bedrooms.
Yes.
And if you don't have a significant other, I don't think you mind sharing. You have 2 Airbnb units here?
Yeah, so I'm in the house right now it's a 4-bed, 3-bath. I actually don't own this one. I'm renting it, but this is another way of doing the house hack. I have somebody who can Airbnb that room and somebody who Airbnbs that room, and I, on my best month, broke completely even. On my mediocre months on average, I'm probably paying about $500 towards my mortgage. But I make $3,200 in my housing allowance, so it's another $2,500 a month that I get to save and reinvest.
And you don't have to pay taxes on.
That's true. Yeah, the housing allowance isn't taxed. Yeah. So and I got no maintenance because I'm renting, whatever. There's all kinds of benefits to. So this is my second legitimate house hacking strategy, but there's all kinds of strategies. I always tell young officers in the military that they should just you buy a house and get a bunch of your roommates to rent out rooms from you.
So it sounds like really the big takeaways. First and foremost, it's way easier to prevent ending up in a hole to begin with.
Yes.
But first, year or two, keep your head down.
Yep.
Contribute at least 5% into the Thrift Savings Plan?
Correct.
Because that'll get matched.
Yep.
And then make sure that's set more aggressively.
Yeah.
And is that something you just...
Yeah, you can, if you know what funds you want, you can pick, or if you're like most people who don't really want to do all the research, you can just put it into the life cycle fund of the year that you plan on starting withdrawals, and then it automatically factors that.
For the easy button, TSP into the life cycle fund.
Yep.
And then when it comes time that you're going to buy a place, use a VA loan and house hack.
Absolutely.
And I mean, that right there sets you up financially very nicely.
Oh, yeah.
While you're in the military.
Yeah, I mean, that easily puts you in the top 10% of the population. If I lost everything, houses, real estate, business, whatever, I still have my housing covered. I still have a food allowance. I still have a job. I still have full medical. I still have full dental. I wouldn't end up
rifle
on
in Missouri.
Yeah, sniper rifle in Missouri. I wouldn't end up on the streets, right? And that allows me to take risks that the most people get into this analysis paralysis and they talk themselves out of big risks, but like I can afford to take some of those risks. So the reason I was successful is I was able to buy, you know, I mean, we didn't talk real estate so much, but like I jumped into a 10 unit as my second property with like seller financing, all these crazy weird things in like a not a great area. And my wife was like, oh my gosh, what if we lose everything? And she was fairly supportive, but it's like, who cares? Like if we lose everything, we start back at like basically financially free and build from there. Like there are a lot of worse situations. So the military, if you play your cards right, allows you to be able to take those risks because you're set up in such a way that if it goes totally south, you're still okay. So like play big. And I think that's a big advantage.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I appreciate you letting us come up and set up in your house. It's super, super neat to meet folks on social media that are investing in real estate and building big businesses and doing it the right way. One compliment I've just got for you is your who you are online is absolutely who you are in person.
I appreciate that.
I appreciate you hanging out with us, but also I legitimately am looking forward to having that conversation with my brother and for other folks that are active duty, kind of maybe reevaluating like what you actually want out of life versus what would feel really good right now.
Yeah.
And kind of just that delay of gratification and how, you know, if you follow that, you truly can go from military to millionaire.
Absolutely.
I think that was
Thanks for having me
beautiful
on.
ending.
That was a really, that was
Good
good.
ending.
I
I like
appreciate
tagged
that.
it with your brand right there.
No, I love it. That was good. I hope he's satisfied.
I'm good.
Cool.
So that went super, super well. Got exactly what I was hoping to get out of it for my little brother, which is how to use the TSP and the VA loan to become a millionaire while you're in the military. We're now gonna go get some barbecue.